Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name's Em, and as you probably saw in today's title or thumbnail, we are going to talk about the novels that are on the finalist lists for the 2023 Hugo Awards. And I have some feelings and some thoughts. So let's get into it. There are 6 books on the finalist list, and let's go ahead and just say what they are. The first one is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. This is cozy fantasy. I think. I don't know actually if it counts as cozy, but it's fantasy. And it's a fairy tale style of fantasy. There's a princess, there's a quest, there's a goblin market, you know, all the traditional tropes, but done in T. Kingfisher's style, which is whimsical and has a sense of dry sarcasm and yeah. And then the next one is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is about an orc named Viv who is retiring and has her heart set on opening up a coffee shop in a town where nobody has ever heard of coffee before. It's about found family and finding your place and finding your passion in life. And this is 100% cozy fantasy. Low stakes, all the things that I think we have really come to look for collectively in the past year. Nona the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir is also on the finalist list. This is book 3 in the Locked Tomb series, and I can't say anything about this because it super spoils Gideon and Harrow, so we'll just leave it at that. Next up is the Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. This is kind of a pandemic book. It's set in the early days of the pandemic, and our main character, and I was doing so good, Jamie, is offered a chance to go care for some unusual animals, we'll say. And then we have The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This is kind of a retelling of the Island of Dr. Moreau, and in this we are following Carlotta, who lives in her father's house, and he does some unusual experiments on people. And then the last is The Spare Man by Mary Robinette Kowal. This is a sci-fi murder mystery that takes place on a cruise ship. Okay, so those are our 6 books. I'm going to talk about my overall thoughts about this list first. Overall, I'm not super impressed with this list, I will say. I feel like I read more widely in sci-fi and fantasy last year than I have in previous years, and so I have a better grasp on what has come out, and well, better grasp than I did in the previous years when I read the Hugos. The first year I read the Hugos, I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on in sci-fi and fantasy. I was primarily a romance and a middle grade reader, and I read fantasy for fun, but intermittently, and I hadn't read a ton of sci-fi. So that year, the Hugos were really exciting for me because I didn't know hardly any of the authors, and so it felt exciting and it felt new and it felt like there was some great representation. And then the following year it was a little bit of a similar experience. I was paying more attention, so I'd read more of the books. I'd also been a bookseller longer, so a part of this may be that I am just now more plugged into sci-fi and fantasy during the whole year, and so the Hugos don't feel as new and exciting anymore because I have read most of the books prior to these lists coming out. So it's not it's not what I'm using to find new favorite authors anymore. But also, this is a very white list this year. We have one author of color out of 6. We also have less queer rep than we have had in previous years. And this, for me, overall feels like a very fine list of books. Now, that being said, 3 of these books were kind of misses for me. I did not like The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, and I thought The Spare Man and Nettle and Bone were just fine. They didn't blow me out of the water. I didn't, there were structural things that I didn't love, and I was never fully sucked into those stories. And then I don't feel like Nona should be nominated, not because it's not a great book and not because I didn't absolutely love it when I read it. I talked about this in another video because Nona was also on the Nebula shortlist for this year. And I said it there. I will try to only say it once here. If a book in the middle of a series cannot be read on its own, I don't think it should be nominated for a standalone award. Like, absolutely it should be nominated as a series, but you cannot just pick Nona up and read it. You have to have read Gideon and Harrow because it is already not going to make a ton of sense, even if you have read those 2, but you're going to be so lost. So it cannot be read out of context with the rest of the series. So for that reason, I don't feel like it should be nominated, even though I really love it. And then Legends and Lattes was also on the Nebula list. And this is the first time I think I've seen Kaiju Preservation Society on a list, which I kind of love because I had a really fun time with it when I read it last year. I think it's a really fun book, even though it's a pandemic book. I think it's like great for those of us who like were kids when Jurassic Park came out, or my husband compared it to Pacific Rim. So like if you like those 2 things, Kaiju Preservation Society is really fun. Is it doing anything new or notable? No. But if you just want a good time, it's perfect for that. So good. So it's disappointing for me that none of these books are really doing anything new in genre. I have to continually remind myself that that's not what the Hugos are for. The Hugos are not industry professionals who are recognizing new or notable books in the genre. It is a pay-to-play popularity contest. That's what it is. So if you don't want to or can't pay the $50, then you don't get to nominate and you don't get to vote, which is fine. I, for all that I am making this video, do not pay to nominate and I do not pay to vote. Maybe one year I will. I'm not going to this year. I just am not invested enough to put my money where my mouth is. Let's put it that way. And I've actually been wondering if I will continue to read the Hugos every year. I don't know if I'll do it next year. I'll have to wait and see what the list looks like. But I am finding myself being more interested in what the Nebulas are nominating. And I was looking at the Ursula K. Le Guin finalists for this year. And I really am interested in some of the projects that are on that list. There seem to be people who are doing different things, which is kind of exciting. And I also am looking at the Ignite Awards, which Angela from Literature Science Alliance put on my radar. So I might, who knows, I might not do this anymore because it feels like a very fine list of books. And I want to make more space in my reading life for more than fine, I guess. But here is what I think after going through this list. I know I blazed through the synopses kind of fast, but I also feel like these 6 books have been so popular that if you spend any time in SFF, BookTube, or Bookstagram, or book talk or any of those spaces. I feel like if you hang out in a space that specifically talks about SFF books, you have heard about these 6. So I don't feel like you need an in-depth plot. If I am wrong, let me know and I will make note for next time and I will give you a more lengthy, in-depth review of these books. But what I did want to talk about, I don't have Nettle and Bone with me, so I can't hold it up in the stack, but just pretend Nettle and Bone is here. What I think these books say about 2022 is that readers are looking for a cozy, good time. This is going to be real general as I go forward, but we are not wanting too hard, too serious, or books that are going to make us feel uncomfortable. That is what I see when I look at these books. We want stuff that's going to be fun, that is going to be escapist, and that is going to make us forget about the hellscape that our world currently is. Because as I was being cranky about how this list isn't super diverse and it could have better rep and all those things, I was starting to think about what do these books say about like these readers collectively. And I really think this one's on a cruise ship in an alternate history. Is there such a thing as an alternate history? I don't know for sure. I believe the history in this book is built off the alternate history that is in the Calculating Stars. So that's where we are. It's set in the future. We're on a cruise ship that is going from Earth to Mars. You know, totally different world, totally different future than what we're probably going to have. This one is set in our world during a really hard time, but Jamie gets to escape and go into this other dimension that is parallel to ours, but where these Kaiju monsters live. And it's a total romp. It's a great adventure. John Scalzi is a really funny writer. And if you are just looking for a good time, this book is going to deliver that for you. Same thing with Nona. The readers that read The Locked Tomb, we love The Locked Tomb so much. I love this fan base, but this fan base can also be really rabid about getting people to like these books. So the readers that have been in this series from the beginning, like every book Tamsyn Muir puts out is going to be a good time and is going to be beloved if you are already in love with this series. This is the one where I struggle because I had a really hard time with it, but I said this in my reading vlog where I read this book, but there is always a book in the Hugo lineup that is for the literary fiction readers so they can feel like they read genre, and this is that book in my opinion for this. Nettle and Bone, kind of same thing, a little bit cozy. It's got that fairy tale rhythm and rhyme to it, which can feel really comforting and nostalgic if you are a reader who grew up on fairy tales. And I think Kingfisher's writing in general is really cozy and comforting. And if you are, and I think this book brought a lot of readers over to the Kingfisher hype train, which is great. I want the biggest hype train for her because I love her books. And I think this book got so many people there. And then Legends and Lattes is the book that literally started a cozy fantasy moment in the world. So obviously it is the cozy fantasy we measure all other cozy fantasies against. So I can see why these are the books that are on this list. And I probably need to adjust my expectations that the Hugos are not going to be the awards I want them to be, because that's just not how they are built. I am hoping next year that, like I said, there's more diversity, that there's some authors that are doing some different things. There will not be a Locked Tomb book on the list next year because Tamsyn Muir is not having Electo come out, or her publishers not having Electo come out until early 2024, I believe. Right now, anyways, we'll see. That could change. You know, the other thing I would like to see, and this is my complaint with the novellas, and it's going to be my complaint again, is every book on this list is published by Tor, except for Daughter of Dr. Moreau, which is Del Rey. And I would love to see books not published by Tor on this list as well. But again, I don't think that's what the Hugos are going to do. And I think Tor has a lock on like the general public for SFF because they are so recognizable and do such a nice job curating their catalog. So I get it. And I need to read other lists instead of the Hugos, I think, going forward. But I did think there are some interesting commonalities between these 6 books, even if it's not what I would have liked. I'm really disappointed that The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez isn't on this list because I softy enough that book because I didn't have enough brain cells for it at the time. But The Vanished Birds is my favorite book that I read of 2023 so far, and I'm assuming when I go back to The Spear Cuts Through Water that it will also be a favorite. I just need to read it when I have a full selection of my brain cells and I'm not running on summer fumes. But I'm sure if I had done the work ahead of time, I could have listed other books that I would have liked to see on this list. But that's the first one that pops into my head, and I will be interested to see what book wins this year. I'm also really surprised that Babel isn't on this list. That's the other one. But then it also made white readers big mad. So I don't know what the demographic is like for Hugo voters. And I would be really curious to see what the breakdown is. I'm going to guess it's mostly white. So the Hugo is as far as I know, one of the only science fiction fantasy awards this year where Babel is not a finalist. I think that's a very interesting thing. Maybe that's just me. Maybe you don't think it's interesting. I think it's interesting. But in the grand tradition of torturing myself, I am going to rate these 6 books in order of my personal enjoyment. And then maybe we'll see which one I want to win. So I would say Daughter of Dr. Moreau was my least enjoyed. And then The Spare Man. And then Nettle and Bone. And then probably Kaiju Preservation Society, though I really did like that one a lot. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. Legends and Lattes, which I think I gave 5. And then Nona, which I gave 5 as well. And yeah, so for my personal enjoyment, that is where I land. I don't think Nona is going to win. Tamsyn Muir usually does not. I would put it between Legends and Lattes and Nettle and Bone for which one will win this year, but we shall see. Anyways, I'm going to wrap up this video. If you have any thoughts and feelings about the Hugo finalists this year or the Hugo awards in general, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below if you want to share them with me. If you want to leave a comment but don't have anything to say, let's leave a skull as the emoji today. And I hope you all are having a wonderful day, week, month, wherever you are in this flat circle we call time. And if you have made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for spending your precious time with me. I really appreciate it so much. And I will talk to you all in the next one. Bye.